Testing, testing. Cool. Awesome. One more. All right. I think we're about at that time, so let's get started with color management. You guys are here for my class, right? Or my talk? Okay. Some of you are like, what am I here for? Okay. Anyway, welcome to the program. We're going to talk about color management, and one of the interesting things is that we're talking about color management, but I have a black and white picture, so let's change that a little bit. There we go. Welcome. Thank you all of you for being here. I appreciate you taking your time to come to this talk. It's going to be fun. So what we're going to do is talk about color calibration and color management for everyone. This is going to kind of give you an idea how to get started with color management, what happens during the process, so that we have a better idea. And just to give you an idea, I have around 50 slides that I'm going to actually present to you, a lot of information dense in 20 minutes. So strap in and prepare. Let's go. Starting with, I am Suwansang. I don't know if you guys know me or not, but I am a photographer, I am an educator, technologist, and also a consultant. I love sushi and espresso. Thought you might like to know that about me. I am BenQ Band Ambassador. And by the way, how many of you have been to BenQ booth already? For those of you that haven't, shame. I'm just kidding. All right, definitely come by the booth 1821. We have hardware calibrated displays for photographers. You should check it out. They're a really great product. Anyway, I'm also Calibrate Ambassador and also an X-Rite Colorati, an Adobe partner and influencer. So lots of really great band behind me. And I'm going to speak really fast. You're finding that out already. Okay, the best place to find me online is youtube.com/artisright. You can take a picture, but I also have a stack of my art baseball cards. So if you want to come and get some of these at the end, I will hand them out to you like ninja stars. So please come up and get them. And you can contact me that way too. I have my email there. But I have over 100 guides, tutorials on color management, how to go in and calibrate your displays, step-by-step guides for like different displays. It's going to be a cool resource for you. So we're going to talk about calibrators. We're going to talk about what happens during display calibration, but mostly what I want us to walk away with today is not necessarily to become an expert and stand here and talk. By the way, I just only have like the keynote showing what's next. I don't have notes. Everything is up here. I don't expect any of you to be an expert like I am. What I like you guys to walk away with is this concept of vaguely familiar, so that you hear these terms, you understand them. You may not be able to comprehend them, but that's okay. So that when you have a conversation with someone, it's, you already have that foundation. So vaguely familiar, remember that. All right. So some of you may have heard about X-Rite. They have actually changed their product strategy a little bit. So some of X-Rite product portfolio has been moved over to Calibrate. And I want to bring this up ahead of time because sometimes, the device are like vice versa. You can go back and forth between them. They work between two softwares. So I just want to share that with you, that there are some changes, but essentially Calibrate is exactly the same devices as the X-Rite before. So if you have an X-Rite device, it's exactly the same. You don't have to worry about it. Also, there are some naming changes. For example, products that are known as I1 are now known as the color checker product. So we may be referring to them a little differently, but this is more of like an FYI to share with you what has happened in the color management industry. And if you guys want to take a picture of your phone, that is a brilliant idea. It lasts longer. All right, Calibrate.com is where you can get all support, software update, and everything. But now let's talk about the type of calibrators. How many type of calibrators are there out there? How many of you can kind of tell me a little bit? All right, 0110 is running across the stage right now. We're in the digital world, no more tumbleweed. Okay, some of you got that, that's fine. All right, so there are generally two types of calibrators that you have to think about. There is the colorimeter and the color spectrophotometer. Now you may wonder what's the difference between the two, and I spell that out for you right there. So a colorimeter can really only calibrate displays and projectors. A color spectrophotometer can do two more things. It can do printer, color management, and it can also do color measurement. So if you want to know, like for example, I'm going to use your purse as an example. You want to know what pink that is, you can use a color spectrophotometer to find out exactly what color that is, so you can reproduce that precisely on the display. That's really cool. Now the other thing that a spectrophotometer generally can do also is that kind of like the scanning part of things, but you have to use that with in conjunction with another set of software. All right. So what are the difference between these two when it comes to just kind of like the overall price range? Well, a colorimeter is more cost effective. It is faster at display calibration, where it takes around 8 to 10 minutes. A color spectrophotometer can take anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes to run a calibration on a similar amount of patch sets. It is faster, like I said, it's faster for display calibration. It is actually the best device you can get for display calibration. And this is going to be the best device that you can get if you don't do any type of studio printing. So if you have an inkjet printer and you don't really want to profile or anything, getting a colorimeter is a great and effective way to just calibrate any type of display that you have, right? Now the other device, the color spectrophotometer, is that, like I said, it takes 2 to 4 times as long to calibrate a display. It's an all-in-one device, so it can pretty much do everything, but if your workflow involves like printing and you really want to get the best result possible, you can go in and custom profile your paper. But let me say it this way. The paper profile that you can get from the website are generally going to be 80, 90+ % good already. In fact, if you want to see a display to print matching, I would like you to invite you to our BenQ booth, 1821. We have one printout and a picture that we shot on the display, fully color managed, and it matched almost perfectly. It's really uncanny, and the only thing I did was to really calibrate the display, and I'm printing on 100mm paper. So 100mm, thank you for sponsoring the paper, and what I am doing is I'm just using their profile to print, and it looks really good. So you should definitely stop by and see what it looks like. So this is kind of like a simplified charts on solution for displays for the current product lineup and solution for printers with colorimeters. And then we're going to talk about the calibration process really soon here. This is kind of like the product's transition between X-Rite and Calibrite. So if you have one of the devices that are on this display here, is separated into like these categories. You can kind of identify which one you have. This is more of like just an FYI thing. One thing that I want to mention is that if you have one of these devices from X-Rite before, the Color Monkey display, this i1 display, i1 Display Studio, Color Checker display, or the Color Monkey device below, all these will currently work with the software that they have just released. So if you have this device that's older, even though they don't make a Color Monkey software anymore, you can still download Color Checker Studio software and run the calibration with it. Here's my recommendation. If you're a photographer, the best device you can get is either the Color Checker Display Plus or the Color Checker Display Pro. Now, we get to the important part of this whole conversation, beyond just the device itself, is what happens during a calibration process. How many of you run display calibration before? A few of you, okay. If you haven't, you'll see color flashing on the screen and it's really cool. And if you actually like record it like me and play it back at like 20 times speed, it becomes really awesome, right? You can get trippy with it. Anyway, so what happens during calibration? Let's find out about that. Starting out, I want to share this with you, is that my philosophy about photography is this. Photography is the exact science of approximation. You'll never get the same thing twice, ever. It's like walking a river. It's never the same thing twice. Same thing with photography. No matter how much you try, some variable are always going to change. All right. So now, before we talk about what happens then, we need to kind of talk about the type of displays. Some of you may realize this, some of you may not, but there are technically 2 types of displays that we need to be concerned with. Number one is like there's one that are made specifically for photography. Those are what we call a hardware calibration. We're going to cover what hardware calibration does in a little bit as well. And there are software calibrated displays. These are pretty much displays that you have been using for pretty much your entire, or the majority of your career. Besides some of you that have a hardware calibrated display. So for software calibration, there are 2 types of displays. There's the external one, and there are the internal built-in ones. The ones that are built into your laptop, your all-in-one desktop PC, iMac, all those other things. What we're going to talk about, though, is on these 2. The one that are external. So the hardware calibration external and the software calibration external. And the one thing that I will tell you right now is that if you calibrate them, both of these software and hardware calibration will still produce an ICC profile. And let me also emphasize this too, that even if you buy a hardware calibrated display, you will still need to run the calibration on them. Every single display is calibrated from the factory, I guarantee you that, but they're calibrated to the reference value at the factory. Guess what? None of our computers, none of our laptops, none of our PCs, everything, because of software, driver, and everything, is outputting that reference value. That's why we calibrate our display so that our color looks the most precise as much as possible. And if you guys start nodding, I would feel really good about myself. I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that. All right. So both produce an ICC ICM profile. Now for software calibration, let me put it this way. These are the displays that you guys use before. Can you calibrate them? Yes, absolutely. But what happened with these is that the ICC profile that it's producing is doing all these color adjustment. You see that chart in the middle there, how it's like, you know, not really straight lines and everything? How many of you guys color correct in Photoshop before? You guys know that when you like start to pull one color up, you know, the other colors start to go haywire and all the other adjacent colors go weird? That's happening with your video card output. So essentially, if you have a software calibrated display and you're trying to do color correction on it, it's kind of really like, you know, shooting a JPEG file. So what's the difference between a hardware calibrated display then? So on a hardware calibrated display, there is a dedicated chip, and yes, this looks really cool, this 3D LUT, it looks like this 3D color thing. It doesn't look like that. It's just a whole bunch of codes of ones and zeros, but this just makes it look really awesome. Like, yeah, that's a 3D LUT, that's what that looks like. Anyway, so there's a chip on the display that does all the color correction for you. And when you use a hardware calibrated display with that chip, what you generally get is a line and a curve that's generally smooth. Now this is an oversimplification of this whole thing, but essentially what that's telling you is that it's allowing your video card, your graphic card on your computer to output at 100% whatever it can, and all of the color correction is actually done at the display. So it's the dedicated chip on the display itself that does that. Right? So it's much better. I mean, there's a reason we shoot RAW, right? The reason we shoot RAW is because we don't want to use the internal processing on the camera. We want to use our big computer, the other algorithms like from Lightroom or whatever, to really do our adjustment. The same thing applies to display. So essentially, it's like shooting RAW. Now, the other thing that it's the big advantage of hardware calibrated display is that you can also run calibration on these multiple displays set up and have them all match perfectly individually by themselves. And this is something that you can't do really well if you run multiple software calibrated display, because your video card will technically allow one LUT output only. But the nice thing about these is that the LUT, the lookup table, is stored on the display, so you don't ever have to worry about these things. A couple of things to note about hardware calibrated displays that you do not want to use the device, the calibration device manufacturer software. You want to use the proprietary display manufacturer software. So for BenQ, for instance, you want to use Palette Master Element. The reason why is because their proprietary software will talk directly with the 3D lookup table inside the display to do a true hardware calibration. So far so good, everyone? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Good, all right, perfect. Let's continue on with the hardcore stuff now. What happens during calibration? How many of you guys seen a color checker chart like this before? This is a color checker classic. Some of you have, that's good. Some of you are just taking pictures. I need to shoot this fast. All right, perfect. So what happened during calibration? We're going to take 3 colors, red, green, and blue, for instance. All of these corresponds to a value on the RGB spectrum for the color space, and they correspond to a CIE color lab value. Now, when you run a display calibration, you have to remember that you're really just calibrating for that moment in time. So the next time you go in and calibrate, the result's going to vary. The next time you go in and calibrate, the result's going to vary again, because your display refreshes at 60 hertz. What that translates to in human language I can understand is that your display refreshes 60 times per second, not minute, seconds. There's a lot of data being pushed off your display, so when you're calibrating, you're just taking an instant in time. Remember that. All right. So what happened is that when we run the calibration, there is some color mapping that happens. So we have the REF value. This is the reference value. This is what it's supposed to be. And by the way, these are actual values from like a laptop, I believe. And this is the measure value. Notice how they're off from each other, right? They're not right on, all right? So what happens then is that an ICC profile will then go through and adjust these colors, similar to the way how you do color adjustment in Photoshop to get the skin tone right and everything. But the thing is that every time you do these color adjustment, if you take a look between the reference and the adjusted, they never line up properly, doesn't it? It comes close. For example, this is supposed to be 28, but it got 29. This is 14, but we got 20. So there are some variations here and there that happens, and those variation attributes to what we call a delta E. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So the one thing I want to quickly sidestep us to is talking quickly about ICC profile between a software calibrated display and a hardware calibrated display. All right, so the ICC profile for this is that on a software calibrated display, the ICC profile would contain the color gamut, the color adjustment, the gamma, the white point, all these information. But if you take a look at it on a hardware calibrated display, it just has the gamut, the gamma, and the white point. No color adjustment because everything is done at the panel. Pretty cool stuff, right? This is a lot of like hardcore science. Like, I never knew being a photographer, I have learned this much technical stuff, but this is awesome. You're gonna be able to match your stuff. That's a delta E formula. That's the best thing I could present to you guys today. Boom, right there. If you want to take a picture of that, you can find out on Wikipedia. I took it from Wikipedia, so anyway. But it is the actual formula they use. So here's what delta E means. How many of you guys heard of delta E terms before? Some of you have. Delta E is a color variation between the reference, what it is supposed to be, and the adjusted value, what you got in the end. So each color would have a delta E, and by the time you're done with the calibration, your computer or the program is going to give you what they call an average delta E. So the average delta E is the average of all these colors, and in general, this is the rule of thumb you should go by. Delta E below 3 is considered good. Delta E below 2 is considered great, and if you have anything higher than that, I would not trust the colors that you see on the display. You should run away from it as fast as you can or recalibrate it, all right? I'm just gonna quickly show you the program, what that looks like. You know, when you do calibration and it will give you a delta E report, you should always do that. And I know I'm talking really fast because I have 50 slides to go to in like literally 20 minutes, but here's the thing. You can follow like a step-by-step guide on YouTube, and somebody actually made a comment like, he speaks so fast. It's actually easier to listen to him if you actually slow him down to 70.75. So if you need to do that, by all means, I'm okay with that. All right. I don't know if this is going to show up or not, but this is showing you a delta E of 3. Oh, forget it, this is not going to show up. If you want to see it on my laptop, I can show you a delta E of 3, delta E of 2, and like the difference between the two. I'm going to skip that. All right, external hardware and software calibrated display. I'm using BenQ as an example, but this applies generically throughout all the displays that are out there. You can go in and choose the color gamut that you want to calibrate your display in. Now this chart that's coming up, you want to take a picture of because this gives you the holy grail for all the difference between all of them. Starting with the first column, hardware calibrated display, software calibration, and external and internal display. And we're going to talk about some of the differences really quickly. The ability to choose gamut, you have it on the external one, but you do not have the ability to choose the gamut on the built-in display, meaning that the one in your laptop, the one in your iMac, guess what? You're stuck. However they calibrated from that factory, that's it. There's no more going back. That's the only thing you get. So the calibrated under gamut, like I said, you can do it on the other one. The only one that has an adjustable 3D lookup table is the hardware calibrated display. Everything has a lookup table, but they're fixed from the factory, okay? All of them will need an ICC profile, and the last row there says which one has like color remapping. So the hardware calibration doesn't have color remapping, all the other one has color remapping. This is like good information right there. So here's the thing, come to the booth, I will talk at a normal human pace, I promise, and I won't be rushing through as much. 1821, by the way, we're doing like a headshot thing, so if you want to come get your headshot at the booth, you can do that too and get like the print out. You can walk away to print on 100 mil paper print and see how the display match side by side. So anyway, we're doing that. And just quickly, I want to show you BenQ SW display lineup if you're interested in it. That's the whole thing. And boy, I actually sped through that and I have 2 minutes left. By the way, best place to find me online is youtube.com/artistwrite. hello@artistwrite.com would be like the place to contact me. BenQ's doing discount, and I'll hand out my art baseball cards if you want to come grab them. I think that's pretty much it. Any questions though? Oh yeah. Should I give you a stack or just one? I'll give you a stack. There you go. Let's hand them out. She's handing them out. Okay, I got some here too. Here. Yeah, you can have as many as you like. Any questions though about color management?
I have a profile from the print lab. Should I use their profile or do I trust the...
So his question is that, Samuel's question is that he has a profile from the print lab. Should he use the print lab profile? The answer to that is yes and no. So you should use the print lab profile for your prints, right? To just kind of quick preview it, but you should never use it for your display. It's not meant for your display. Any other ones? Yeah, what's up? What happened?
Mark.
iMac, does iMac needs a calibration? The answer to that is yes, you should calibrate your iMac.
Like, but only a few parts on this, right?
No, you can calibrate any Mac, you can calibrate any display.
I mean, like, this was last slide, and it was like some points I can calibrate, some I can't.
What that means is you can calibrate, but there's certain limits to what you can adjust. Yeah.
I need to buy this feature to calibrate.
Yep, you need to buy the hockey puck. Yeah. Uh-huh.
If I calibrate already, do I need to recalibrate once a while?
Okay, so, this is a good question actually. How often should you calibrate your display? Any answers, any thoughts?
It's here.
Once a month? Once a month is a good answer. Anytime, I would probably say anything between like two to like around 4 weeks is a good time to go and run a recalibration because your display will drift over time and aggregately, if you do calibration every year, you'll definitely see the difference between like all of them. All right, I'll be here today at BenQ booth. I'll also be here tomorrow, so if you want to stop by, you come up with questions, please feel free to do so. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate your time.